Need for Speed Unbound is the newest installment in the groundbreaking series known as the Gotta Go Fast saga, and it's also a series that can't seem to figure out what exactly it's trying to be. This is only because every single release is something different from the last in a massive way, and this one is no different. Set in some city called Lakeshore that is located, presumably in California, we play as the newest legendary video game protagonist named cel-shaded girl that isn't good looking, on her quest to get her car back from the chick that stole it from her, and become the champion of Lakeshore by racing through various races, such as takeovers that remind you of Twitch's firm grasp on your income, drift events that make you drift away from the site of this video, and street races that make you question EA's sanity when it comes to developing video games. She'll also drive some slow and fast cars, each with their own unique and strange benefits and problems. So sit back and grab your snacks, cause this one is gonna be a rather strange adventure. Being someone who doesn't play Need for Speed, you'd be shocked to think that someone who isn't a fan of the franchise chose to play its newest installment. Did it go well? The footage of which will tell you in time. All that you need to know is that I was swiftly given a beating for failing at playing the game, and questioning why I know absolutely nothing about this franchise, which, considering, I probably should have did my research. This is Need for Speed Unbound. This video is being done in a very different style compared to how I usually make my videos. This has mostly come down to three different things. The first is I really couldn't find a suitable way to make this video in the same way that I've made my previous videos this year. So I said screw it, let's whip out an old style from the coffin that is this channel and modernize it to make it cool again. Secondly, this is a racing title, so if you think me sitting here talking about the game in its entirety from start to finish is a good video, then I'm sorry to tell you that you're probably kinda nuts. And lastly, this video just had way too much footage than most of my videos end up having, so to actually use all that footage to its fullest, this was the only style that I felt appropriate. I only pull this style of editing out rarely. After all, only one video in this entire channel's life has ever used it, so consider this video a special treat. And finally, before we begin, make sure to subscribe. Some people find my content to be literal works of cringe and want me off this platform, which I find rather hilarious. Subscribing is completely free, and you can always change your mind at any given time, but you really shouldn't. This game is rather strange, with some rather unique design decisions, questionably strange systems, and some confusing and jank game physics. Even so, it still has some redeeming qualities to it that I have come to enjoy. I'm going to split this video into four major segments, that being the world, gameplay, story, and the good and bad of Need for Speed Unbound. Don't worry, I'm gonna try to cover everything that this game has to offer, even if it takes me 10 minutes to do it, or even 30. So let's hop into it with our story. And to do this, it's time for me to get into the lore segment of this video. Yeah, so apparently both us and our girlfriend named Yas were in the foster care system in Lakeshore. That's kinda messed up. We're picked up by Rydell, owner of Rydell's Rides. Yes, Rydell spelled with a Y, and he took both of us in. Unfortunately, Yas didn't exactly like the fact that Rydell was being kind of a chode, and decided to leave and have her street friends rob his entire shop filled with cars. Yas proceeds to take our car and leave, and never return. She perfectly recreated the dad left to go get milk and didn't come back bit, except this time they sorta knew it was coming. 2 full years go by, Rydell's shop is practically dead, and we find that the street racing scene in Lakeshore was actually dead, but is now getting back in business, and Yas is the leader of it all. Sort of. Thus begins our mission alongside Tess and Rydell to defeat Yas in the Lakeshore Grand, get our car back, and be the best racer in the city. Okay, I think that's the lore. It's kinda shocking that a racing game has lore, right? While we're here in the story segment, let's talk about our characters themselves. I think that their voice acting is fine. It's not super good, nor is it something that hits out of the park, but it's not the worst acting I've seen. It's about average, given that, again, this is EA and Criterion we're talking about here, so the likelihood that anybody wants to voice act for them is really low. I will say that some of the jokes and innuendos that are used by these characters are kinda funny, and there is some good character building with characters like Rydell, Hess, Yaz, and a few other people. Overall, the story, voice acting, and character development is okay. It's nothing to write home about, and feels right at home with the Need for Speed franchise. What I'm saying is, it's average. Although, I didn't expect to see them go for the direction of full-blown LA San Andreas hood, because most of these people feel like they're just from San Andreas, because that's where all the firearms and cocaine are stored, and they honestly act like it, so I'm a little concerned. Anyways, let's now move into the next segment of the video, that being the world of Need for Speed Unbound. After all, open world racing games need a world for you to drive around in, so this one better live up to what Need for Speed Heat and Payback set in place. And I'm gonna be honest, I think they kinda nailed it. Welcome to Lakeshore, a city that looks vaguely like Los Angeles for some reason. I'm not entirely sure that's what EA was going for, but let's be honest, if they were, then you're actually pretty close. It's here that you have many of the standard tropes of Los Angeles, otherwise known as Los Santos. Mainly just a downtown that is confusing to navigate, yet somehow you end up learning how to navigate it even if you don't want to. Otherwise, the areas outside the major city actually give me Forza Horizon 1 vibes.
Are you serious?
There's a few small towns scattered throughout the map, as well as unique places like the Kennedy Test Track, so that you can live your track racing fantasies, the both stunning and large amounts of twisting mountain roads to drift on, and vast open areas between these towns and mountains that you're able to drive through, making for some pretty insane cop chases. There are also loads of collectibles and other side activities that you can do whilst exploring Lakeshore. Whether this be drift zones, speed traps, or jumps, there's lots of things that you could do whilst ripping it down your local neighborhood street. You know, I'm starting to wonder that Forza Horizon kind of set this stuff in motion and now everybody's copying them, so get the DMCA ready. There is also some collectibles that you can find, like strange doll-looking things, as well as billboards scattered throughout the city. The world also changes from day to night, and it has its own share of changes, with the most notable one being that police tend to be more active during the night, and race payouts tend to be higher during the night as well. Altogether, this world is actually just screaming Forza Horizon from it. I'm not entirely sure if that's a good thing or not, given that this game is in no way, shape, or form related to the Forza franchise, but regardless, I think that's a good thing. It makes me feel like I'm right at home with the game franchise that I've grown up with, which at least helps me remember that yes, I play way too much Forza. Anyways, let's head into the next major segment, the gameplay of Need for Speed Unbound. Yes, I know the world segment is a little shorter than expected, but let's be real, this is a racing game. There really isn't any other way that I can make this feel longer. The only way that I can actually make this long is if I play an actual AAA game, and we all know how that generally ends up going, because this would just be a 30-minute video then. When it comes to the overall gameplay of Need for Speed Unbound, I'm going to speak on it in a pro versus con nature. Let's start with the pros by kicking it off with the actual events of the game itself. There are mostly 3 different types of events that you can take part in. You have your standard street races, which can also be circuit races as well. Secondly, you have drift events, which in most cases are actually pretty good, with most of them taking full advantage of Lakeshore's twisty and bending roads. It makes drifting feel like it actually has a purpose in a racing game, as a lot of times you'll see racing games put things like drifting on the back burner, removing it from its main gameplay loop entirely. And the third and final major event that you'll find are takeovers. And the best way that I can describe takeovers is they're a lot like the Gymkhana events from Dirt 3, requiring the player to drift, smash objects, get airtime, and other related stunts to gain points, similar to that of drifting events. The score in both of these events actually feel really good, with the numbers set high enough so that it's a challenge to overcome. And it also proves to be a challenge for those who are familiar with the Need for Speed franchise.
It's kind of hot.
I find that to be a really good thing, as it makes it seem like the game doesn't feel like a cakewalk and requires some challenge from the player to progress forward. The cop chases, of which I'll have some negative feedback on it later, are actually pretty challenging, requiring some pretty good moves and dodges to escape the feds that are chasing you for not subscribing to my YouTube channel. Sadly, however, this is where the pros end. There's actually quite a few complaints that I have with this game, so I decided to make it its own segment. So let's move into the pro and con segment of Need for Speed Unbound. I'm guessing EA didn't learn their lesson, did we? This game has its issues, as every game does. Something isn't how it should or appear to be, balance may be off, AI might be overtuned. This is par for the course for video games. Need for Speed, on the other hand, does some things that I didn't expect to see coming into this game. To start, while there are multiple different racing types, you'll start to notice pretty quickly that most of the races take place in the exact same areas. What I'm basically saying is that the variety in races is, Not great, because even in games like Forza, Burnout, or Test Drive Unlimited, and there's probably others, they will present a race as the same track, but it might have a few different turns or some roads added to it. Need for Speed, on the other hand, doesn't really do that at all, as you'll start to notice pretty quick that you'll just have done the exact same race like 5 times during your playthrough, which is kind of rough if you ask me. The AI in this game is, how do I put this lightly, kinda weird. In several instances, this game has made me question what the actual frick the AI is trying to accomplish. For example, there have been times when the AI traffic cars just spawn completely out of thin air, causing me to go from first place to 4th in the middle of a race. There are several other times when during a race I will be chased by the feds, only for then said cop to, for no reason at all, ram me off the road, missing a checkpoint and setting me back to 5th just to be a chode. There's even times when police cars won't even show up on the map at all, but they're 100% there. What the fuck? Meaning that you could just be driving along in the city, thinking the cops aren't near you at all, when in actuality, they're on your rear bumper, and the map's just not telling you whatsoever. I honestly feel like that the AI is kinda out for blood in this game, without actually having a reason to be out for blood. And bear in mind, this is what it looks like when the game's set on normal.
Dear God.
Not on easy or on hard, but just basic, bone standard normal. So if you're coming into this game with the idea that the AI is gonna go easy on you, the answer most likely is no. No, they won't. The police chases themselves, while I did say they do have some challenge to them, generally speaking, they're kinda easy. And this trickles back into the AI bit from a moment ago, in the sense that it's easy to lose the police, shockingly, but then the game just decides to spawn them right in front of you the moment you lose them, meaning that you just end up having a weird, like, cat and mouse chase where you lose the cops and then they spawn in front of you and then you have to do it all over again. It's annoying, but at least, hey, losing the cops is actually pretty easy. But again, that does feel a bit off for a franchise that makes the police one of its main features, so hopefully they can fix that. The upgrade system used for building and upgrading your cars is simple and straight to the point, yet I will still complain as to why everything costs a heck of a lot more than you would expect. I don't want to buy a Miata and then have to put 100 grand into it just to make it competitive for A+ racing. The anime and or cel-shaded approach that EA and Criterion took with this game is a shocking new move for the Need for Speed franchise. It's welcomed by some, but for me, it's just not quite there. The cel-shaded characters are kinda cool, don't get me wrong, but it just doesn't really feel like I'm playing Need for Speed, and it feels like I'm playing some random anime racer made by Square Enix or something. So I'm not entirely sure if this is something that EA and Criterion should take going forward. I would just like a simple Need for Speed, you know, something that isn't like completely weird, you know? That's not to say that Need for Speed is a bad game, because I think that Need for Speed Unbound has some great things about it, from its pretty good world of Lakeshore, its variety of race types, a half-decent story, and a good challenge of difficulty. Mostly in races. But that still doesn't change the fact that this game has some issues. Ones that I feel like they need to be addressed either in this game or the next installment. And let's be honest, it'll probably be in the next one though, considering EA has a tendency of not really fixing their games. And when they do end up fixing them, they don't do it right at all. Regardless, Need for Speed Unbound is available now on Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play, otherwise known as your simp card to EA. So if you want to give this game a shot, I'm not going to stop you. And in fact, I'm actually telling you, you probably should play this game, because I think it's a rock solid game. Better, in my opinion, than the last Need for Speed game I played, that being Need for Speed Heat. But sadly, it's time to end. My name is PandaPowerSauce, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.